Okay, so in the last video I showed you how to basically manually install Flux, but it turns out, as I found halfway through that video, that RunComfy already does have Flux available to you directly in RunComfy. So we're going to look at this. I actually haven't really played with it much. I'm very interested to sort of see how it all works. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm on RunComfy, and you'll see right off the bat, one of the top workflows here at New and Popular is Comfy UI Flux. So let's actually just run it and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Run Workflow. I know I need a larger GPU. I don't know. You know what? You might be able to get away with large for this, but just for my own safety, I'm gonna run the extra large just because I know that I've heard a lot of people saying that Flux takes up a lot of VRAM. So I'm gonna launch this. You'll notice here that it automatically defaults to the beta release, which is basically them saying like, hey, we're not entirely sure this is ready to go yet, but you can play with it and you can try it. So this includes all of the Flux stuff. So I'm just go ahead and next. And I'm just going to leave this at 1 hour and I'll hit launch. And I'm going to let this run 35 minutes again. So I'll stop the video and I'll come back when this is loaded. Okay, and we're loaded up here and we can see that we already have a basic workflow. And that's, if you loaded it directly from RunComfy, you can get that. I'm actually going to save this out so anyone in class who's doing stuff locally, I'll also send you this. You might need to actually install some new nodes. I'm not entirely sure how a lot of this works just yet. It's my first time really playing with it. So we'll just do this Flux work. Okay, cool. If we look over here, I'm just going to clear out a little bit of space for us. We'll see that what we're doing here is we're loading out a diffusion model. So again, this is loading in our previous model, which we can also grab. You'll see now my Flux tests will show up as well. So I can also switch between those. They're the exact same model. I just uploaded my own. This one came preloaded, so if you don't want to spend 3 hours downloading, uploading files, you can just use RunComfy's beta version. You'll see it loads in this diffusion model by itself. And then what it does as well is it loads in a clip loader. And the interesting thing here is loading in 2 clip loaders at once. The reason you probably want to do that is actually because it's going to average out, or like basically the more clip loaders you load, the better your results end up being. I'm going to skip over the text encode. The basic guider is a new thing that I've never really played with. It looks like it basically passes in a bunch of things into this, and the guider goes into our sampler custom advanced. So you'll also notice that we do not have our traditional custom sampler here, or our traditional K sampler. If you do this, you can see that we actually have a bunch of different outputs. You'll notice there's no negative conditioning, which I don't know if that's common for Flux, or if that's a part of the idea is that you don't need negative sampling anymore, or negative prompts. Maybe it is as is. And then you'll see basically we do a lot of other things we normally do in a K sampler in these other parts here. So we have these things called sigmas now, which is our scheduler. So when we switch to the Schnell model, we'll actually change our steps down to 4. Just to get that to work. And then you'll see our empty latent is still being passed in. These models can generate 1024 by 1024. Maybe let's try switching our batch to 4. We have our random noise, which is being sent in directly into this as well. And then we have our K sampler. So the K sampler selecting is being done as a part of these samplers. So this module is doing mostly what the K sampler used to, but it does a little bit more as well. Let's see if there's actually a sampler custom. Yeah, so there's this one as well. So there is a negative. Interesting, this one's called advanced, but this one is not called advanced, but actually has a little bit more. So you could pass in a negative to this as well. So again, you would probably do, and this has noise built into it here rather than here. So again, there's slight differences between these things, but it's helpful to see this. I would bet maybe there's a way to do conditioning with a negative prompt being sent into this. Anyway, I need to look into this a little bit more. I haven't really played with these tools just yet. But you can see that we also now have our VAE, which is loading in our AE model. So at this point, I can go ahead and hit run. I'm just going to use the default that came with the workflow. What we can now do is hit qprompt. And I imagine this is going to take quite a while to load. These models are very, very large, so it's going to take a bit of a time to load this. I'm actually just going to wait in the recording. We're going to wait together just to see how long it actually takes. Okay, that actually loaded quicker than I expected. And now we're loading in both the clip models. One of them is quite large, the other one's a little bit smaller. Yeah, see my GPU and VRAM are almost at max. I might try after this to try and run it on just a large and see if it actually happens. I've heard from folks that it's not really that possible, but let's see. Or maybe it was training on a 24 gigabyte card that wasn't possible. So we'll try. I'll switch to large right after this and see if it works. So while we wait on these images to be generated, one thing I'll mention is that the thing that people have sort of talked about a lot with Flux is that Flux is sort of what SD3 was supposed to be, meaning it can generate a lot of high quality images. There's been some issues with SD3 around the types of images you can generate that either generate well or don't generate well, those sort of things. So it looks like, a lot of people are saying that Flux is much, much better. The downside is that they do have a slightly different model. You can get the dev one open source, but a lot of the other ones that they say are even better are available only via an API. So there's some challenges there with sort of open source tooling and that sort of thing. One of the nice things about this particular tool is that, as we'll see, it's much better with sort of prompt adherence. So you can see already an old TV with the word Flux on it, sitting in an abandoned workshop environment, create an Unreal Engine 5 with Octane render in the style of ArtStation. And you'll see it generates some pretty good looking images. They all look quite realistic, pretty good. Let's try one other thing. Let's just see if our dog riding a dolphin in the ocean, sunset vibes, ocean waves. Let's just see how this looks. Prompt adherence is better. I've seen a lot of samples where the examples of an image where you say something on the left, something on the right, it does a good job of sort of adhering to those directions. So I think it's definitely worth playing with. You do need to remember it's a little bit of a bigger model, so we'll see if we can load the large on it. I think we might be able to, but we'll just have to check and see. And then, we can just play with this and sort of see what we get. One thing to know is Flux came out as of this recording, which is happening on Monday, August 5th. Flux came out like 3 or 4 days ago. There are not yet IP adapter models for it. There are not yet control net models for it. I've seen a handful of people testing and experimenting with testing LoRa's on it, but I've yet to see like a really great LoRa result yet. So if you want to use it today, it's going to, these are the tools you have essentially. We'll look at one example of using image to image, but you don't really have a whole lot of options beyond that. I expect, it seems like people are very excited about Flux, so I expect in the next couple weeks we will get some of those tools. In some cases, some might take a month or two to actually train, but in general, I think we're going to get some better results, and that'll be really cool to see. And then we'll have more to play with, but it is going to take a little bit of time before we get those models. So you can see here, like, we basically have solved the classic dog riding a dolphin problem here. I think I can, like, pretty convincingly say, like, this looks pretty damn good. Like, that is a dog in a good riding position. A lot of the waves are nice, the sunset's nice. All of this looks quite good. We've even got more of an animation style, so we can actually try anime style. And let's just hit key prompt, see what we get there. So while we do this, I'm actually going to set up another image-to-image example as well. So for this, we're going to need a VAE encode. And we'll plug in our latent here. And we're also going to need a load image node. And let me load in. Let's see, where is my crappy little sketch here? I don't actually know if I named that thing. Let's see what else we have here. Well, let's just try one of these. Let's try a Jordan Belson image and see how that works. So we're going to load our image into the pixels. We're also going to need our VAE here. So we encode it using our VAE. We'll wait for this one to generate. The reason I want to do this is I've seen a lot of people talking about the denoise being very, very different. if you are used to Stable Diffusion, you'll know that even at denoise of 1.0, you still get this image back pretty easily. But I've seen other people's test examples where even saying it's like 0.8, you get a drastically different image back because of how the denoising system works within this tool. So you'll see we have our anime. Those aren't the best anime. They look more just like animations. But again, maybe this case of where LoRa or maybe better prompting in the future will give me a better result. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happens here. So I'm going to, let's see, what do I want to do? I'm actually just going to load clip interrogator. Except I might not have interrogator load here. All right, we'll screw it. We're just going to make up an idea for this. So we'll just say abstract animation, radial lines, bright colors, 16mm film grain. Okay, so we just want to see what happens when let's actually set the denoise to start with to 0.4. So what's going to happen here is we're going to load this image in. We're going to then denoise the image about 40%, and then we're going to generate an image. So let's see what happens. Pretty good. Yeah, not too bad. If I generate another one, let's see if we get something different. Yeah, so we get pretty much the same image back. That's what I would expect from a denoise of 0.4. Let's try 0.75. And you'll see we start to get a very different image. Now, if we go to 0.85, we're now getting very, very different images. Like, this is quite different. I would say, like, with SD3, you wouldn't get this much of a difference even at 0.8. If we set this to 1, we might actually get a completely different image. I'm not sure how much of this image is even going to play through the noise when we denoise it to 1. Yeah, very little. We almost get a completely new image. Now, this works differently than how Stable Diffusion does. Stable Diffusion, even at 1.0, which honestly always surprised me because I thought that meant it would just be pure noise, some of the image did still make its way into the output. Here, I see we're getting something like very, very different. So just something to be aware of, you will have to play with sort of the denoising aspect of this a little bit more, and if you're used to a certain way that stability works, this will work slightly differently. One last thing I want to look at is, I'm going to remove our batching here, our denoising. I'm going to go back to an empty latent. I'm going to look at the Schnell model. Schnell is the fast version. It's a German company, so they call it Schnell for fast. We're going to go down here, and we're going to set our steps to 4. And we're going to run the exact same thing here. Do I need to do anything else? There are different weighting types, but we'll leave it at default. Okay, so we'll hit qprompt. Qprompt again. Something weird is going on here. Oh, there we go. All right. Now it's loading. Again, every time you reset this model, it's going to take a little bit of time to load, but it will work. I think the Schnell model is some like 18 gigabytes, so it will still take a little bit of time to load. But the plus side is once this model is cached, it's actually much faster to generate new images because we only need 4 steps from this model. Now, I bet the quality is slightly lower than, say, than the original model, the dev model. But, if you're generating a lot of images fast, or maybe you want something that's more video-like, or you just want to be able to, like, basically, explore different images at a much higher rate, then using the Schnell model with the 4 steps is going to be able to generate images much quicker. You'll see, I bet our sampler is going to run much faster. Maybe not the first time, but definitely every time after it's going to run much faster. And remember, I am setting my batch to 4 here, whereas before I was just generating 1 image. So the generating 1 image was much faster because we're only doing it once. In this case, we're going to have a bunch of images. Sorry, I just realized I double clicked that prompt and it's like redoing it again. Okay, so here are images. Well, there are images. So you'll see it does run. I notice it's running a little bit faster. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like if this is 4 steps versus 20 steps. I wouldn't necessarily say it's 20% or 80% faster, but I would say it's faster in general, which is great. It's really helpful if you want to do a lot of idea generation, those sort of things. So in general, this model works pretty well. It's pretty cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this and I'm going to reload this in like a large or a medium and see if I hit any size problems there. So give me 1 minute while I do all that. Okay, kind of good news here. The Flux workflow does work on RunComfy on a large machine. It does not work on a medium machine. I tried it a couple minutes ago and I got an out of memory issue. So you do need to use the large machine, which means you're going to spend a little bit more money generating images using Flux with that, but you don't have to use the extra large, which is very expensive. So 50-50 basically how well it works. But you can generate it using the large machine. So if you do want to go ahead and play around, the large will work for you. And since there are no LoRa's or IP adapters or control nets yet for these, you don't really need to worry about adding additional layers. Now, when we do get those additional pieces, you may need to go back to an extra large because you cannot use, that'll add to your memory. It'll add to your VRAM usage. So you just have to be careful about that. Cool, so that's it for this video. Hope you are having fun generating images with Flux. If you do make some cool stuff, drop in Slack for me. That's it for this. See you next time.